A couple things real quick before we get started tonight. First of all, thank you for coming back and being a part of this with us. Now, what we're doing with young people, if you have any kids in here that you would like to be in another place, now let me tell you what you can do if you'd like. We've got nursery through 5-year-olds in the nursery, okay? We've got a program set up for them there. And then 6 years old through 11, okay? The attic is where Kids Club is going to be tonight, so 6 years old through 11. If you have a 12-year-old that you would like to go to it, okay, you could take that, but we're not letting anybody past 12 in there no matter what. And so that's where we're at right now. So if somebody needs to go right now, they can go ahead and head out to that. Sheila, see you later. Where do you fit? In the 12-year-olds or? Oh, okay, I got it. All right, good. It's good to have you tonight. Now, a couple things we got to do because we have normal things we have to take care of. Did anybody have a problem today? You saw something go wrong? We need to address it. Put your hands up and we'll get you a sheet so we can address those things. Is that a question? No soap in the... We'll put it on a piece of paper. We'll make sure it gets cared for. I'm surprised you were washing your hands, Kenny. No. Okay, all right. No, it'll get taken care of. Anybody else? You need one? Anybody? All right, we're good to go. Thank you, guys. Appreciate that so much. And then secondly, real quick, who did not get a prayer sticker this morning? We got the prayer stickers out. Who did not get one? If you keep your hand up for a moment, and we'll make sure that you get prayer stickers tonight. And these are reminders for you to pray. Listen, pray. Pray about everything. And God loves prayer, and He responds to prayer. And so this is just a reminder sticker. These are clings. There's no messy gum on the back or anything like that. They will, you can stick it on something and then it'll pull off when you want to remove it. Put it on a mirror where it'll remind you to pray. Put it in your car. Instead of texting and being distracted, you can pray and be distracted. And all right, good. We good, fellas? All right, let's pray, and we're going to open, and then we're going to have Mr. Wilson lead us in one song, and then we're going to turn it over to Denise so she can get right into it. Okay, let's pray together. Father, thank you again for a good Sunday morning service, for these two folks that joined our church this morning, Father, for another person coming for baptism this morning. Father, we pray that you'd continue to help us as we grow and we expand and we see more done for you. We pray that you'd be upon Denise tonight as she helps us and teaches us in this subject matter that we need to learn more about. And Father, may your Spirit be present here, and may we be helped in a tremendous way. Please, Father, that lives would be saved, lives would be changed, and Father, the furtherance of the gospel ultimately is what our purpose is. And so we pray for that tonight. Thank you that we can be here, and we ask this blessing in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, Brother Craig, come give us a song.
All right, grab your songbooks, turn to song number 237. 237, Tell It to Jesus. We'll sing the first, the second, and the last verse. Here we go. Are you weary? Are you heavy-hearted? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Are you grieving over joys departed? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other, such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Do the tears flow down your cheeks unbidden? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Have you sins that to men's eyes are hidden? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other, such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Are you troubled at the thought of dying? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. For Christ coming, kingdom are you sighing? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other, such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. All right, you may be seated.
All right, now She doesn't need any introduction after this morning, but some of you were working in a different area of the building or something this morning, and I just want to let you know this is and she's teaching us, and I'm sure most of you already know that end of the service, fellas, okay? And she's going to be here with, oh, by the way, we're going to take an offering tonight for Northeast Ohio Right to Life. And so here's what I need you to do. At the end of the service, or at some point during this, make sure that if you have a tithe or an offering or something for the church, you make sure it gets in an envelope, make sure it gets marked. Anything that comes in that's loose or anything that's written for Northeast, right to First Baptist, put it in the envelope. If you want a check to go to Northeast Ohio Right to Life, if you have any loose cash or anything like that, will go to Northeast Ohio Right to Life. Is that understood? Anybody got a question about that? Okay, so we're going to take an offering at the end of the service. All right, Denise, you're at.
Can you hear me? Is this on? I can't hear the feedback. Any of you that are in the back, if you sat down and you don't have a packet in front of you, make sure you come and take a seat up front. I really don't bite. I might jump out and wring your neck or something, but I need everybody to have one of those packets. I also put a pad of paper by everybody's so you can take notes. There's a lot of information that's in those packets. I don't want you to look at it now. I'm going to be going over a lot of that stuff, and I'm going to probably totally confuse you. So a lot of what I'm telling you is in those packets. You can go home and read that later. If there's anybody that doesn't have a pen, I've got a box of pens up here because you can take lots of notes. So make sure you come up and get a pen so you can take notes. Sure.
Does anybody need a pen?
But I always like to start out in prayer too, and I put in front of you, everybody should have one, although it's probably in pink, it says the prayer to end abortion. And I would like it if we could stand and say that prayer together first before we start. It's a bright pink card. It was on top of your packet if you'd grab that. Lord God, I thank you today for the gift of my life and for the lives of all my brothers and sisters. I know there is nothing that destroys more life than abortion. Yet I rejoice that you have conquered death by the resurrection of your Son. I am ready to do my part in ending abortion. Today, I commit myself never to be silent, never to be passive, never to be forgetful of the unborn. I commit myself to be active in the pro-life movement and never to stop defending life until all my brothers and sisters are protected and our nation once again becomes a nation with liberty and justice, not just for some, but for all, through Christ our Lord. Amen. Let me explain some of the things that you have in front of you too. You all should have got a little pin that has feet on it. You see that I have them on my badge here. Those feet pins are the size of an infant in the womb that is about 10 to 12 weeks gestation. And I usually wear a pin every single day, everywhere I go, and I never tell anybody what they are. But invariably, someone asks me, and I tell them, and that's all I say. I says, that's the size of an infant's feet at 10 to 12 weeks when a lot of abortions take place. And you'll see eyes open wide and jaws drop and sometimes tears in their eyes because they don't realize it. It's like the doubting Thomas. You hear about abortion, but you don't think about it. And they see the pin, and everybody's been telling you, oh, it's just a blob of tissue. Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But I wanted to gift you all a set of those pins. I usually give away a pin almost 2 or 3 times a week because it's just a way for me to evangelize without having to say much of anything else. And they ask me where they can get them to. There's a company called Heritage House 76 where you can order these pins if you want to do your own little evangelization. But it's really good. I always carry a couple extra in my pocket most of the time, but if I not, I just take it off of me and I give it to them. On your little pin there, it tells you what they are, and it shows you that that's the size of that infant, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Also, I just want to go over some abortion facts. In this country, every single day, anywhere between 3,500 and 4,000 children are being killed. In fact, today, The abortion clinic in Cuyahoga Falls was open this morning while we were here in church. They were killing children. And that, to me, is gut-wrenching. They change their schedule all the time, and I put out a big, we have a regular list of people that go and witness at the clinic, and they all showed up in full force this morning, mainly just to pray. It's very difficult to go to an abortion clinic when abortions are going on. I've been doing this for years, and I don't go much anymore because they know me, and I don't like to instigate anything, just 'cause my presence instigates them, and from the abortion clinic escorts. So I don't go a whole lot, but when I do go, I'm nauseated because I know what's going on inside behind me, and I can't look at it. So I either have to pray, and I've gotten in the habit of counting cars as they go past, because sometimes I see the same car going past 2 and 3 times, and I'd like to think that somebody saw me or somebody saw us and they changed their mind. In fact, when you witness at an abortion clinic, you probably have more of an impact on the community than you do about the girls going in, because they've made up their minds, and our job is that they should never have that option to go there. So I'm going to teach you a lot today. We're going to teach this class like you're going to start witnessing at an abortion clinic tomorrow. But even if you never go, what I'm going to teach you, and I'm going to teach you like you are going to do that, this is invaluable information for talking to your friends, your family, whenever you get into those discussions at holidays where everybody gets all mad and upset. I don't want you to get mad and upset. I want you to have facts, because you say your facts and then you live by doing. We don't want to create controversy. We're not the tree huggers that go out and shoot abortion doctors and burn down clinics. That's not what it's about. We're about life. We're about love. We're about compassion. Many people use abortion as birth control. I say women should have a choice, but like I said this morning, make your choice before you get pregnant, because why should you kill a young innocent child for your actions? I think I talked this morning about the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the 14th Amendment, and I told you that I'm going to give you some answers for some things. How many of you stop at stop signs? Okay, you stop at a sign. Why do you stop at a stop sign? Anybody, hazard a guess. Somebody throw it out there. Why do you stop at a stop sign? Besides it being the law. It's the law. Safety. Because if you go through that stop sign, you could kill somebody, right? So I tell people, especially the ones that say the government shouldn't interfere with my right to what I do with my own body, I say, well, why do you stop at a stop sign? You could kill somebody. We should tell you, you can't kill that child. I say that when I get up late and there's no traffic on the way to work, but I'm late, the government is interfering with my right to get there on time by making me stop at that stop sign. It's the same thing. You're killing someone. We're not interfering with any of your rights. You should have had you have a right to reproduce. You don't have a right to kill. Women, the reality is, even though we have very strong laws, women can abort in Ohio, in this country, any time up until the moment of birth. Even though the laws might say otherwise, and you want to know why? It's because the abortionist can invent a reason. He could say it's for the life of the mother, or something's going wrong, and they can invent it, and nobody polices them. We have very strong laws, but they're not enforced. Legalizing abortion did not reduce abortion-related deaths. You'll hear that if we legalize abortion, we're going to go back to the days of the coat hanger. And that is not true. That never was true. And I can go over those facts about you later. It's about women's health, too. Who said abortion was healthy? It's the only procedure where someone is killed. Two people go into an abortion clinic. One doesn't come out. One dies, and another one is psychologically and physically damaged. In your packets, and you don't look at it now, there's a blue folder that says, is this your choice? Inside here, inside this cover, we have a listing of the abortion centers that are in Northeast Ohio. It does not include Cleveland area, so some of you that are from north of here, it includes all the ones in Akron, Canton, Portage County area. And on the inside of this, it has all the different laws related to abortion. Just read this for your own knowledge. What we're going to start out with, though, is I want to show you a video. This video is produced by the Pro-Life Action League out of Chicago. They are a very Catholic organization. The Catholic Church has been in the pro-life business ever since Roe v. Wade, more so than any other church. But again, there's all kinds of churches and denominations involved. They just happened to produce this video called No Greater Joy. So you're going to see a Catholic spin on it, but what they are telling you in this video relates to all of us. So it's going to be, I'm going to cut her off early a little bit, but it's going to be between a half hour and 40 minutes. And what you see in the video, I'm going to emphasize and give you more information about later. So I just want you to watch this video. You don't have to take many notes because I'm going to talk about it later unless you see something in there that you want to ask me about. So if you could start that video, and this is called No Greater Joy. a little early because the gist of what they've said in there is I think you have the idea that we are there to make a difference. Now, what you saw in there was the ideal situation for a clinic. You got to talk to the girls going in. The reality is that at most abortion clinics and Planned Parenthood centers, they have parking lots that are private and you can't go on the property, so you almost never get to talk to the girls going in. And the other reality of the situation is that's the last place we need to be because we really don't prevent a lot of abortions. We should be educating people long before they ever even think about having abortion. We should be making abortion unthinkable. The people that go to abortion clinics and pray and witness, they were talking about them, people spitting on them, doing that. That very rarely happens here in this area. It might happen in the big cities. I've been doing this here for years and years and years, and there has been some incidents, but nothing that is unrecoverable from. It's usually language. People that are in the devil's clutches will try anything to get you into the devil's clutches. And if you ever speak with anyone that is angry about abortion or they start yelling at you, the probability is maybe they've had one, or maybe they've talked someone into it, or they've been complicit in some way, and there's a lot of guilt associated with that. How many of you remember when you were in school, did anybody ever get a bad grade on a test? And then you lied to your parents why you got that bad grade? Or you lied to the teacher? That's called rationalizing. And rationalizing is really easy the longer it goes on because you tell yourself a lie and you start to believe it. And it might not affect you today, it might not affect you tomorrow, but it definitely will affect you at some point down the line. And the longer it goes on, the lie builds, the bigger the guilt feels, and you never know what's going to happen. I was giving a talk at a church one time, and it was actually to a group of pastors, and there was the maintenance worker was a woman that was in the back of the room, and after I was all done, she came up to me crying and threw her arms around me, and that doesn't happen very often, and she had had an abortion years ago and never dealt with it, and she needed healing. God can forgive anything. He can forgive. So we have to have compassion. And once she is healed, she can share her story with others. We have to have compassion for the girls because they're learning it's okay. And they're not learning all the side effects. So what you saw in there, there was a brochure that was shown that says your constitutional right, sidewalk counseling is a constitutional right. You have that brochure in your packets. You also have in your packet, read this later, this is Pro-Life 101 that gives you some of the questions and answers. It's all the arguments people give you, like it's not a baby, it's not this, it's not that. And the abortion facts that I was talking about, you also have that in your packets. I'm giving you a lot of information because in order to be a sidewalk counselor or in order to argue with your relatives and your friends or whatever, you have to have knowledge. And you never make up anything. If you don't know the answer, you tell them, oh, I'll come back. Or you call me. I'll be glad. My cards are here, or on almost every piece of information there is our website. If I don't have the answer, I'll get it for you. What you saw in the video too about you can be on the sidewalk, that's true. Some cities, some states have tried to pass laws that are called bubble zones, where you can't come within certain distance of a facility, but as long as you're on a public sidewalk, it is the law. The attorney you saw in there, his name was Tom Breha. I happen to know him. He's a really good guy, and he's defended a lot of these cases. He's gotten bubble zone laws thrown out of places because you are allowed to protest anything except they want to make it seem wrong that you should not be able to protest abortion. You do have to obey the laws. We're going to be talking about that, what the laws are. Like you can't walk on the private property, you can't go into the parking lot. And you heard them talking about yelling at people. Your faith is important. Prayer is important. but it's always not enough. You may have all the faith in the world and know that this is wrong, but if you were to go out there and start yelling across that parking lot that you're going to kill your child, do you think she's going to listen to you? Or is she going to go into the loving, compassionate arms of the abortion clinic escort because you're harassing her? It's doing this and talking to people about abortion is a little bit like marketing and salesmanship. Do we have any salespeople out there? Salespeople, they learn that in order to sell something, there's a couple different rules. Show it, explain it, show it. So you don't always have the chance to do the second explaining and then the showing it to people at abortion clinic, but you can show it the first time by showing your compassion. You either hold a sign that says something like, Jesus loves you, or abortion kills children isn't a bad one, or pray to end abortion, or you stand there and pray because you make a huge impact to the people going by. You need to be educated about what abortion is, and that's what I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to show you and tell you some really hard truths right now about what abortion is, because most people don't know. They just know it ends the life. So I'm going to be a little bit graphic and talk to you about a little bit what goes on and how an abortion is performed. The majority of the abortions are done in the first trimester, but usually none before 8 weeks to 9 weeks, because they have to verify that you are pregnant and how far along you are. So that is done usually by ultrasound, and as technical as today's ultrasound is, it usually can't pick up on the fetus in the womb until about 7 or 8 weeks at the very earliest to see the beating heart. Your heart actually starts beating around 21 days. So the fetus does have a heartbeat, but it's very hard and very difficult to pick up. So the abortion that's done in that first trimester, and unfortunately I don't have the tools to show you this, is usually a suction abortion, where the cervix of the woman is dilated and they put in a suction tube and suck out the contents of the uterus. The baby is literally sucked out because it's very tiny. You can come up and look at these afterwards, but this is what's called the first trimester of what the children look like. This one here is 7 to 8 weeks. This is when they're first picked up on ultrasound, but most abortions are done a little bit later, sometime up to 10 weeks. Now, if I can have some volunteers, I'm going to give you a fetal model that looks like when a lot of abortions are being performed. I'm going to give it to you in a little bag, and when I talk to people, I usually pass them around, and when you pass them and hand them to somebody, it's automatic for people to cradle it in their hands because they realize it's a life. This is the size and the weight. This is like the one you saw in the video of what that fetus looks like. And if you look at the little feet, they're not very well, this isn't a really high technical thing, but they look like the size of the feet that's on your little pin. And I would like everyone to have one of these, because you can show this to people that this is what they're saying is just a blob of tissue. So if somebody wants to volunteer just to pass one out to everybody, yeah, here's a couple boxes of it. If everybody would take one. And then all the other materials that are left in the seat, we're going to collect those afterwards so I can take them to another class. Here's some, and I would like everybody to take one of these. But here's the reality of what happens then. If that baby is a little bit too large for that suction tube, what happens next is a D&E abortion. This is usually a second trimester abortion. This is the tool. You may have seen this in surgery. This is a forceps. And this forceps has teeth on it. And this forceps locks. So the abortionist will dilate the cervix, reach in, and clamp on to that fetus, and usually through ultrasound, they lock it in place, and then they pull. And what do you think happens? Does that baby come out whole? No. It comes out in pieces. If any of you, did anybody here see the movie Unplanned about Abby Johnson? They have, of all of your abortion clinics, they have a room that's called the POC room, which means products of conception. And they nicknamed it in there Pieces of Children, and that's the reality. If that makes you sick to your stomach like it makes me, then you're human, and that's the reality of it. So that's what's the dilation and evacuation important abortion. Third trimester abortion. Does this needle make you cringe? It should. I love this thing. You know, when I was younger, I always wanted to be a singer, and I had a good voice. I was the first soprano in my choir, and I developed, and I thought, I'm going to be an opera singer. But I developed silent reflex disease that slowly hurt my vocal cords, and I can talk, but if I talk a real long time, I get hoarse. But if I sing, it's even worse. And so you just fulfilled my fantasy of being Katy Perry with this headset here. This needle here is used to put it uses digoxin. It's given into the abdomen of the woman, ultrasound guided, to shoot into the heart of a child in the third trimester to cause it a heart attack. So we call this the heart attack abortion. They think if they kill the baby first, that it's okay and it's humane to induce labor. This is what we use, and I hope you remember the heart attack abortion in the third trimester. And it's every bit as horrible as you would think. There's also what we call the toilet bowl abortion. Sometimes you'll see this on buses. If anybody ever takes a bus, I've seen these ads on the public buses that say you can have abortion in the quiet and safety of your own home by taking a pill. Well, isn't that special? The abortion pill is RU-486. It's a combination of two drugs. One is called mifepristone and the other one's misoprostol. The first one, and it's supposed to be done before, supposed to be done before 9 weeks. The FDA has allowed you to do it up to 10 to 12 weeks in some places. But the first pill, what it's supposed to do is kill the baby. The second pill, which is taken a couple days later, is supposed to, if you don't start labor naturally, will start your labor, and you abort your baby into the toilet, and you see that baby. And you talk about a nightmare, and they talk about the quiet and safety of your own home. And I apologize if this is graphic, but that's the reality. It's the toilet bowl abortion. It's the heart attack abortion. It's the rip the baby to shreds abortion. It's killing a human life. You have a handout in there which explains these in detail. It's called You Have a Right to Know, and it tells you about each of these types of abortion. It's killing a child. When I'm talking to people outside of my mission here, and I'm trying to change someone's hearts and minds, I very rarely use the word abortion. I say death or murder, because that's what it is. Even though it's legal, it's the death of a human life. So you have to watch your terminology too, because if you watch it on the news, they call it reproductive rights. It's anti-reproductive. What is reproductive about abortion? I also gave you a handout there. It looks like this when you read it. It's all about what I talked about, the heart attack abortion, the RU-486 and the procedure. If you saw Unplanned, you saw it in full graphic, how Abby Johnson experienced the RU-486 abortion in the quiet and safety of her bathroom. It's awful. So the toll that it takes is awful. I also gave you a handout that I want to talk to you about, because you're going to see this in the news a lot. It's all about Plan B, the morning after pill. Wow. The morning after, it's going to save you from having a child. The morning after pill, anybody can go into a pharmacy and get it without a prescription. Your children can go into a pharmacy and get it without a prescription. They cannot get an aspirin in a school without permission of the parents, but they can kill their child without your permission. It's helped the human trafficking industry. It's helped anything bad, any way to get out of having a child, on prostitutes, anything. You can go in and you can kill your child just by requesting it. And you think that it's just not going to make a woman conceive, but that's a lie. Plan B is a very strong carcinogenic drug. It's trying to block the progesterone in your body. and it's trying to block conception. But even hormonal contraceptives, you might not know this. Hormonal contraceptives have two parts. The first part is supposed to prevent you from conceiving. But there's a second part to it. That is the abortifacient. Say that your contraceptive fails. When the sperm goes, it can travel down the fallopian tube to the egg, and it can fertilize the egg. But the second part of a hormonal contraceptive causes the lining of the uterus to shed, so that when that fertilized egg travels down the fallopian tube to the uterus, there's no place for it to go, and you spontaneously abort. And you don't know it. You never knew it. That is what they don't tell you. In the hormonal birth control used to be illegal. And in the 1960s, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, I always have trouble with that word, changed the definition of pregnancy. They changed the definition to say once the fertilized egg has implanted in the uterus, so that it would be easier to sell birth control. So they're telling you that you're not pregnant if it hasn't implanted in the uterus. And that is a bald-faced lie. They also hid a lot of the statistics. Did you know that hormonal birth controls are very carcinogenic? They contain a lot of estrogen. And estrogen in a female body, when she is pregnant, is perfectly normal. But if you're introducing that estrogen in the body and you haven't become pregnant, what the estrogen does, well, I'll explain that a little bit farther down the line when we talk about some of the side effects. But you'll have that in the everything about Plan B and about RU 486 in your handouts. I want you to read that over. We talked about the types of abortion that are in there. You have the suction aspiration abortion, but here's another thing that they don't tell you. Did you know that in Ohio we have the enviable, to some people, status of being the fourth highest state in our nation with high rates of infant mortality? We're not a third world country. Our babies are dying, and mainly among black women. And they can't figure out why. But that's not true either. We do know why some of them are dying. When a woman has a surgical abortion, they force her cervix open. The cervix is not meant to be open until a child is coming for delivery. That's natural. So when you force that cervix open to do an abortion, you are weakening the cervix. The two main causes of infant mortality are premature birth and low infant birth weight. If you have a surgical abortion, your chances of having a weakened cervix and delivering your child prematurely has just doubled or tripled. The more abortions you have, the higher it goes. And they refuse to make that part of the informed consent procedure before a woman gets pregnant the second time, or if a woman is pregnant and she's never asked the question, have you ever had an abortion before, they won't even ask it so that they can take steps to help her have a healthy birth the second time when she finally wants it. So those are things that they don't tell you. You can have a torn uterus in abortion because when this tool goes inside your abortion, the uterus is not very big. And the uterus went at the time of a pregnancy of 10 to 12 weeks is probably about the size of your fist. So you're forcing these tools in there. It's very easy to rip a hole into the uterus. D&C abortions, they scrape the uterus to remove all parts. But you're scraping for baby parts. Doesn't that make you sick? And I'm telling you this not for you to tell these girls going in the board. I want you to have this knowledge. The RU 486, they don't tell you that there's been 35 deaths in the last 3 years, several years from RU 486 from these women, because the doctors aren't monitoring them. And very often a lot of these clinics that are giving you this drug, if you have a complication at home and you call up the clinic, they're either not open or they tell you to go to the hospital and they don't have your medical records to know what you've done, and women die. There's lots of complications that can happen from an abortion. If the doctor doesn't count all the parts that he's pulled out of the uterus, it's very likely that there's parts left inside and a woman can develop sepsis. Sterility, infertility. You might not want to have a baby now, but it might compromise your ability to have a baby someplace down the line because of the damage that you're forcing upon your cervix. I've also given you another brochure called Surgical Abortion, Know Your Risks. Everything that I've talked about, I'm going to go on, it goes into a lot more detail here. I'm giving you a lot of reading, so I want you to go home and do your homework, and I'm going to have a test tomorrow. I promise, no. But let's talk about breast cancer. What does breast cancer have to do with abortion? And why aren't they telling women about this? Did you know that breast cancer used to be considered a white woman's disease? But the amount of I'm going to get this all jumbled up. The amount of breast cancer among black women has risen drastically. And do you want to know why? I talked a little bit about estrogen. When a woman becomes pregnant, a lot of estrogen develops in her body, and it usually goes to the breasts. And that's a natural feeling. That estrogen, at 32 weeks into a pregnancy, changes into milk-producing globules in preparation for the baby's birth. It's a magic point right around 32 weeks. If this process is stopped by an abortion, that estrogen remains pregnant. Those massive amounts of estrogen remains present in the woman's breast and has now increased her risk for breast cancer 8 to 10 years down the line. I'm not saying she's going to get it, but the risks have risen drastically. Now, abortion was legalized in all 50 states by Roe v. Wade in 1973. 10 years later, in 1983, you saw dramatic increases in the rise of breast cancer among women, but they won't tell you that. There is a movie called Hush. It goes into how abortion affects breast cancer, post-traumatic stress syndrome, and infant mortality. That tells you all these things. And the movie was produced by a woman that is pro-choice, that she was tired of hearing that there might be a risk, so she went and investigated on her own and found out that there is a risk. She remained pro-choice. I don't know why, but if you ever have the opportunity to rent that or look it up on the internet, it's called Hush. And it's amazing, the statistics. So I've given you a pink handout that's called Breast Cancer Has a Proven Link to Abortion According to 8 Medical Groups. Now, the National Institutes of Health and the National Cancer Society kind of poo-poos that notion and says, oh, no, it's not. You can talk to any surgeon that, if they interview women that have had breast cancer, what a huge number of them have had abortions. And among the black population, it's astounding. The black population, women make up, in Ohio, black women make up 12% of the population and have 47% of the abortions. Abortion is being sold in many areas to black and Hispanic and low-income populations, and it's disgusting the way they market it. But we have these medical facts that I will go to the infant mortality groups, I will go to the breast cancer groups, that they don't want to hear because they consider abortion a political issue, and there is nothing political about abortion. You're killing our people. 61 million babies died since 1973, and no one is hearing about these risks of breast cancer. Did anybody here know about the risk of breast cancer and abortion, or the risk of infant mortality and abortion? These are the facts. I'm not going out there to fight this on religious grounds here. I'm giving you the facts. And you think that when you go to have a tooth pulled, or you go to have, I had carpal tunnel surgery, and I broke a wrist, and I have all these plates in here. I had to sign all these consent forms, and they told me the risks of everything. When you go for an abortion, they don't tell you all these things, and they should. And we've tried to get the laws passed to tell them that, and they don't. So I want you to read all those things and keep that in the back of your mind when somebody says that abortion is a safe procedure. Because when Clinton was president, he says abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. And about the only thing that is true of those things is that it's legal. It's not safe, and it's not rare. I've given you a couple of other things that this one I really like. This is called Here I Am. And in many churches, in many school groups, they conduct baby showers for pregnancy centers, pregnancy resource centers, and they do it over a 9-week period. And every week they pass out a paper in the church that tells you where that baby is in development, and 1 week stands for 1 month, actually. And I've given you this paper so that you can see the route of fetal development. Like when the child is conceived in the womb, you're not even as big as the head of a pin, but you have all the DNA necessary to make you a human being. At that moment of conception, the DNA is present to tell you what your eye color is, what color your hair will be, whether you're going to have pimples, whether you're going to be tall, whether you're going to be short, whether you're going to be perfect like me, like I tell my brothers and sisters. That's a joke. But it's there. You're not pregnant with a cat. You're pregnant with a human being. It is life at a stage of development. They'll say that baby should have no rights. Well, if you follow that logic, then the shortest among you, or the youngest of you here, should have less rights than the oldest of you here. We teach apologetics with high school kids, and we talk about, we use the SLED defense, S-L-E-D. S stands for size, and sometimes I'll take the tallest person in a high school class and the shortest person. I'll bring them up front, and I'll say, which one has more of a right to life? And they'll say, well, they both have the same right to life. I says, well, according to the abortion or advocates, if you're little inside the womb, you have less of a right to life, so then the short one should have less of a right to life than the tall one. So that's size. Then we have level of development. Should a 2-year-old and two different 2-year-olds that are developing at a different pace, one of them have a different level of development, one of them have a different right to life than the other one? Should a person that has a college degree have more of a right to life than someone that graduated by the skin of their teeth from high school? Your development, you are still a human being. At some stage of development, your rights should be the same. The E stands for environment. You've heard about Kermit Gosnell, the abortionist in Philadelphia. Maybe some of you saw the movie, Gosnell movie. He would kill the children once they were born because he didn't want to pay for the digoxin, and he didn't want to do the surgical abortion, so he would induce labor and let them be born and then kill them because it was easier to him. But that was illegal. He knew that was illegal. But the difference that made it legal, if he had done it 5 minutes earlier, the 3-inch difference of the length of traveling the birth canal, it would have been legal. So you're talking a difference of 3 inches. So should the environment of being inside the womb or outside the womb make that any less heinous of a crime? I will tell the kids sometimes, we'll be in a classroom, and I'll tell one of them to go stand outside the classroom and leave the door open. And I'll ask him, is he still a student? And they say, well, yeah. I go, well, he's not in the classroom. And they'll say, well, it doesn't matter. He's still a student. I go, well, then by that logic, the child in the womb is still a human being. It's just the environment has changed. So you can't count on the environment to make it. And then the last one is degree of dependency. The D stands for degree of dependency. How many here take asthma medication or blood pressure medication or cholesterol medication? Or if you have migraines, you take migraine medicine. How many of you have to wear knee brace? How many of you are dependent on some medical thing? Does being dependent on that make you any less of a human being? So a child depending on the mother in the womb, where it should be the safest, does that make it any less of a human being? So remember those things. So I've given you this. Read it over. You can even do this program. Some churches do this where they hand one out every week, and at the end they have a baby shower where they bring in items to donate to the Pregnancy Resource Center. So that's a cool idea, and we can customize these to use too. I've also given you, since you don't have the benefit of an ultrasound machine, I've given you several ultrasounds from 8 weeks up to, I believe, 25 weeks, so that you can see what the child looks like in the womb. My daughter, in her first pregnancy, at 26 weeks, or 25 weeks, this is a 26-week-old fetus. It weighs about just under 2 pounds. And this is actually the size of what my grandson was when he was born. But when she was 25 weeks pregnant, she developed preeclampsia. Some people call it toxemia. And it was very sudden. She lived in Chicago. I live here. And the symptoms came on very, very quickly. And what this does is it affects all your organs, and the only way that the mother can die, actually, and the only way that she can live is if she ends the pregnancy. But what the doctors will tell you, you have to abort that child. So she was rushed to the emergency room, and the doctor told her that if she did not abort her son, they knew it was a boy, that she was going to die. So she calls me you can imagine the call that she made to me. What am I supposed to do? And she's very pro-life. And I said, let me talk to the doctor. So they put the doctor on the phone, and of course, I wasn't very calm. I have to tell you that. I wasn't very calm. And I said, you get her in an ambulance right now, and you ship her off to a hospital that has a level 3 trauma center. And I says, you keep her pregnant as long as you can, and if you have to end that pregnancy, you do a cesarean section. I'm getting in my car. I will be there it was the middle of the night with no traffic, and I have to say that I made it in 5.5 hours, which is impossible, but I did. So they did. They put her in an ambulance, and they gave her, I forget which drug they gave her, but they also gave her magnesium and something else, magnesium to help stop the contractions or not to go pregnant, and then something to help, or steroids to help the baby's lungs. And I got to the hospital. She had stabilized a little bit, then all of a sudden she took a nosedive. And they said, we have to go now. So I had this was back in he's 16 now. This was back then, digital cameras were just getting to be popular. And I tossed my camera to my son-in-law. I said, get a picture. And they took her off to the emergency room and did a cesarean section. And this was born. When he laid in my hand, the way he was curled up, he went from my fingertips probably to my wrist. And there was risks. He was in the hospital for 3 months. He was on oxygen. He coded one time. At the hospital that he was at, they had a 100-bed neonatal intensive care unit. And the reason they had that is because there's so many women that take fertility drugs these days, and so there's lots of multiple births. So he was in there, and there's bells and whistles going off everywhere, and I'm going nuts. And all the women, the nurses would do is they'd go up to him, and they'd go like this to their feet to make them breathe again, because babies this size aren't supposed to be breathing. But this was my grandson, and my grandson got his driver's license this week, and they told him that he should be aborted. So the doctors, it's easier to abort someone than to care for a child for 3 months inside of an intensive care unit. Now, it doesn't always work out to the best, but don't we have to try? Isn't it our right to try and to bring life to fruition? And so if you ever have the opportunity to show these ultrasounds of what a child looks like in the womb, and in the video, you saw that the one girl was not shown the ultrasound. Most abortion clinics are required by law to do ultrasounds to determine the viability of a child. In Ohio, the law is that at 22 weeks, if an infant is viable, they cannot abort that child. But you know who determines the viability? The abortionist. And they don't often show the ultrasound picture to the mother. They don't have to. They have to do one, but they don't have to show it to her. So that's why you saw them talk about going to a women's resource center. We have lots of them in Ohio, and a good majority of them do free ultrasounds. They're not diagnostic ultrasounds. They just show the baby, and about 90 to 95% of women that see that ultrasound choose life. It should never have to be a choice. It is a life. So that is about development. I've also given you something. If you decide that you want to go to an abortion clinic and you want to try and talk to girls, the best time to reach them, first of all, let me tell you where the abortion clinics are. There is 2 surgical abortion facilities in Cleveland. One is called Preterm. The other one is the Planned Parenthood in Bedford Heights. And there's a couple that do just the chemical abortions. There's a surgical abortion facility in Akron called the Northeast Ohio Women's Center. They have a sister clinic in the Cleveland area that does not do surgical, they just do chemical abortions. That means RU46. And then there is one that just shut down in Toledo, praise God. There is one in Columbus. There is one that is being forced to shut down in Dayton, and there is a couple of them in the Cincinnati area. Surgical abortion facilities are supposed to follow the same laws, rules, and procedure as any other ambulatory surgical facility. That means that they have to have a transfer agreement with a local hospital so that if an emergency should happen at the clinic, that all the records and everything go with that patient to the hospital so the doctors can just pick up and not have to start from scratch. But do you know how many times that happens at an abortion clinic? Almost never. They have to follow certain health and safety standards and everything else, and every ambulatory surgical facility, no matter what, if they do abortions or wrist surgery or LASIK surgery, they all have to follow the same rules. They all have to be recertified and have a health department inspection every year. If a LASIK surgery center failed that inspection, they're not given a second chance. They shut them down until they fix all the health and safety violations. Do you know how many times that has happened to an abortion clinic where they fail it and they shut them down? Never. The only one that was ever shut down by the Ohio Department of Health was because it was the DEA shut them down too, and it happens to be the abortion clinic in Cuyahoga Falls for drug violations. And it's a long and lurid history, and I'm going to tell you how you can look up this history too. In that video you watched, which I said again was the perfect scenario, they were doing what's called the Chicago method. If you ever have the opportunity to talk with the girl before she enters, and your best option for doing that is not on the day of the abortion, but they have to go in for a consultation, usually during the week, and most abortions are done on weekends. It's when the clinic escorts aren't there, and sometimes they might listen to you. And if you tell them something like, this doctor has all these lawsuits against him, or he's failed his health inspections, they will listen sometimes, because a woman that is pregnant going to an abortion clinic is not thinking about the baby. She's thinking about herself and her own mortality. And so you have to not tell them, oh, you're killing your baby. You have to say, they're going to hurt you. And they may listen. I've given you one of these too. We have this little handout because lots of times I will stand there and they have to drive past me. If I'm standing there and I don't have a sign, and they don't know that I'm pro-life or what I'm there for, and I'm just passing this out, they might think I have something to do with the clinic, and they take it. And they might drive by, and they might put it in their glove box or something, but they may find it later before they have to go back. But on this little brochure, it explains adoption, abortion, and parenting. Those are the options. Abortion, it has the risks, just very small ones. Adoption, which is the ultimate sacrifice, but you are giving life to your child and allowing someone else to raise it, or parenting. The pregnancy resource centers aren't just places to go to tell you not to abort your baby. Those parenting or pregnancy resource centers around here are awesome places. You should volunteer at sometimes, because not only do they give diapers and formula or help a woman that probably might not know how to raise a child, give them parenting classes, they put them in touch with material goods and resources that are available through the government and other places, plus help them maybe sometimes with babysitting and help them develop jobs and careers, or put them in touch with places that can help them give jobs and careers. No one ever said it was easy. If someone has an unintended pregnancy, no one ever said it's supposed to be easy. And ending the life of that child is not going to make them not a mother. You're just the mother of a dead baby. No one ever said it's going to be easy. I went to Europe this year. I was in Copenhagen, Denmark. And while I was there, I had a traumatic hip injury. I'm a foreigner in a foreign country that has socialized medicine, and I have no medical insurance for overseas. I did not ask to injure my hip, and I couldn't magically make it disappear. I had to make do. I'm not going to go into story, but I had to put up with it. Just like if a person is injured in a car accident, and maybe they lose a limb, or maybe they lose their sight, or maybe they lose their hearing. They didn't ask for that, but they go on, and they make do, and they adapt their life around it. And it's not always bad. Having a child is not always bad. It could be hard. Even in the best of circumstances, it's hard. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to kill my kids, or how many times I want to kill my husband. But you go on with the grace of God. And I tell a story, too. When I was pregnant with my daughter, it was in, and I already told you I'm old. This was in 1978 when I got pregnant with my daughter. I'm the kind of person, if there is a side effect that's listed on a bottle or something, that I get it. So while I was pregnant, I got stung by a bee and found out I'm allergic to bees, and ended up in the hospital because I was pregnant and and they had to do all kinds of stuff because I was going to die from this bee sting. So that was really fun. And then I got strep throat and found out I was allergic to penicillin. And that was another traumatic thing. And my little God's bundle of joy made me throw up for 9 months. Not just the first 3 months. I threw up for 9 months. I wanted to have 9 kids, I thought. But God played this cruel trick on me, and I hated every minute of being pregnant. And and I was fat. Oh boy, was I fat. It was horrible. And then when she was born, it wasn't like it is today where they can give you the epidural and you feel nothing. Back then you were supposed to take Lamaze classes, but me, my college degree is in occupational therapy. So I have a medical degree of a sort, and I knew everything. I wasn't going to have pain. I was just going to pop this little baby out, and it was going to be fine, and I was going to go home and cook dinner. So that, of course, that didn't happen. And I was in like 10,000 hours of labor, horrible labor, and telling my husband never come near me again. And when it started to get really bad, which I thought it was bad for the 10,000 hours previous, the doctor said, she's breech. And we didn't have ultrasounds and stuff at the time. They didn't do all that. And I thought, oh my God, what is that breech? I don't know what that means. He said, well, she's feet first instead of head first, and we have to try and position her around. So I have all these interns and guys pressing on my stomach, and I'm going, stop. I mean, that was terrible. I was awful. They got her turned a little bit, but they decided that he had to use these big medical forceps for the delivery. And in order to use that, I had to have a spinal. After I'd already felt all the pain in the world, I had to have a spinal, and it deadens you from the waist down. So I didn't feel the actual delivery. But one of the side effects of a spinal, if you know this, first of all, you feel nothing. And one of the side effects is you can get spinal headaches. And I got spinal headaches. And they last sometimes up to 3 months. You never know when they're going to happen. I could be walking around perfectly fine, and all of a sudden a jackhammer starts. And the only thing that takes that pain away is you have to lay flat on your back. So my little bundle of joy gave me spinal headaches. So I go home from the hospital, and I never knew one would happen. And we didn't have cell phones. We had the phones with the cords, and I'm home with this bundle of joy that cried all the time and had colic, and I swore it was the devil. And I'd have to back my way, slide my way backwards, the Paige Palmer crawl, but backwards. If you remember Paige Palmer? I'd slide my way to pull the phone down to try and call my mother or somebody to come help me because my baby was either wet or needed breastfeeding. Oh, let me tell you, breastfeeding. I was not good at it, but I did it. So it was horrible, you can say. And if anybody of you have never had a baby, I'm not trying to talk you out of it. This was my experience. It was wonderful. But so everything that could go wrong went wrong. And like I said, she had colic, and she would be fine if I cradled her and walked around. But if I sat down because I was so tired, it's like, ah! So I thought, I'm never having another kid. So when she was 6 months old, I thought I was pregnant again. And there was that moment that went through my mind that said, I don't have to have this baby. Because it was all about me. That was the devil trying to get his clutches into me. But as fast as it came, it went away. But our youth today are being told, you don't have to do that. It's painful. She's going to cry. Or if you're not married and you have a child, it's going to ruin your life. You'll never have a husband. You'll never get a job. Just kill the baby because it's a lucrative industry. You know that's not the truth. That life, I mean, yeah, my daughter, I had those moments, but I also had lots of moments of joy. I mean, when I was nursing her and that look she gave to me and I knew I was giving her life, or when she wasn't throwing up and pooping all over the place, it was really cool to hold her. She smelled good. She brought so much joy into my mouth, my life. And, you know, you forget about all that. Any of you that have had children know that that pain goes away real quick because it's the gift of life that God gave us. So keep that in mind when you're passing this out to these women if they should come talk to you. What a joy it is. Now, on the back side of this, what it also has is the name of all the area pregnancy resource centers. And in that video, we stopped it short, but what they did is they could walk women over to one of the pregnancy resource centers that happened to be really close to the pregnancy or to the abortion clinic. That isn't often the case. But if you give them this, they have to know where they are. Plus, I also give them sometimes, I've got a coupon for a free ultrasound, and it has the number of one of the pregnancy centers where they do it. So this is a really good thing. They're getting something for free. And when they go for an abortion, they pay for this. They pay for this picture that they don't get to see so that the abortionist can put the needle in the right spot or put the forceps in the right spot to kill their child. That's the reality of it. So this is a good little resource, and I've given you each one of those. You also have a very thick thing in your book, or in your packet. It's called A Legal Guide for Sidewalk Counseling. This is put together by a group called Alliance Defending Freedom. It goes into all the different laws and things. It's very good knowledge for you, not just for being a sidewalk counselor, but for talking to your friends, because that's going to come up. I know it's going to come up. But what do you have to be a sidewalk counselor or to talk to people about abortion? Your number one goal, especially if you know you have someone that is pro-abortion, is to get them to talk to you. Now, I happen to live next door to a friend of mine she's become my best friend, that is very liberal and has been pro-abortion for as long as I've known her. But I've never gotten into an argument about her. She knows what I do for a living, and about 5 years ago, I got her to come to one of our fundraisers where we had David B. Wright, the head of 40 Days for Life, was our speaker, and I wanted her to come just to hear him, and she came. And I never bring it up, but she always asks me what I'm doing today or what I'm doing, and I've talked about this, and over the years, and I knew she wasn't going to be an influence on somebody else because she stays in her own little world, or else I might have pushed it more. She has developed more of a compassion for what I do and has an understanding for what I do that you can't just, and she's a social worker, a very liberal social worker that wants to make people's lives easier and as a result thinks abortion should be okay. But she softened her views, and it's just because of how I act and how I've made myself, I don't put up barriers like, and say, you're wrong. I never tell anybody they're wrong because everybody is entitled to their own opinion. But I'll tell you one time I did do this, and I'll tell you this story, this is fun. About 6 or 7 years ago, I had to go down to the Ohio State House to testify on the heartbeat bill. Now, it's going to surprise you that Right to Life of Northeast Ohio did not sponsor the heartbeat bill, nor were we for its passage, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But the reason I went down to testify was, we weren't ever against it, but I was testifying in a provision that was about informed consent. And this particular hearing was very contentious. Usually when I go to testify in a bill, the hearing is usually at 9:30 in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm there for another hour or so, and then I drive back. This hearing went on all day long, and there was about, it seemed to me like there was 1 million Planned Parenthood supporters there in their pink shirts, yelling and screaming out in the hall. And to get into the hearing room, Since I was testifying, I was allowed in, but you couldn't leave. And if you had to leave to go to the bathroom, the Ohio Patrol had to escort you with the dog to protect you. That very rarely happens. So it was a really long day. And the senators and that were up there on their podiums, they got to come in and go in and out all the time, and they were bringing in stuff to eat, stuff to drink, where we had to sit, and they have these comfy chairs, you know, with the wheels, and I was sitting in a hardback chair, and I'm tired. My hip wasn't hurting way back then, but it was a long day. So it got to be, there was so many people testifying that they weren't even questioning them anymore. So when it was finally my turn to get up there, I got up and said my piece, and this one pro-choice senator wanted to question me. And she said, Mrs. Leopold, she says, it's obviously where your passion is. She goes, and you know that I'm pro-choice, but I happen to have respect for other people's opinion, and you look like you don't have respect for my opinion. And I says, I do have respect for your opinion, but what we're talking about here is a fact, and you're wrong. And the whole room behind me erupted into laughing and clapping and agreeing with me, which is totally illegal in a hearing room. And we all got kicked out. But afterwards, I went up to her, I says, the fact that life begins at conception is a fact, it's not an opinion. So when you said in there that I didn't respect your opinion, you didn't have an opinion. You were wrong in your facts. And I never say that. That was the only time that I had ever done that in public, because I had been sitting there all day and I was hungry and I had to go to the bathroom. So your goal is not to tell them they're wrong. Your goal is to get them to talk to you, even at the abortion clinic. Your goal is to convert them. But remember this, you are not going to do that. God is. I always use the parable of the sower and the seed. You know, the farmer goes and he throws some of the seed onto fertile ground where it's going to grow. I hope it grows. And he throws, some of it falls on the sidewalk, some of it falls on the rocks, and some of it falls onto very infertile ground. You sow the seed, and you tend to it if you can. You water it, you fertilize it, and hopefully it grows, but it's the Holy Spirit that's going to make it grow. So you keep planting the seed, even if it seems fruitless, because some of them will grow. And I know that because I have all kinds of grass and weeds growing in the cracks of my sidewalk where I put weed killer. So you know it's going to grow. You just have to nudge it along. So if it can grow on those rocky ground, you know that you can make that seed grow. We have a friend that's staying at our house right now. My husband had a mini class reunion last weekend, and a friend of his came up from Georgia. And he was here 5 years ago, and my husband wasn't really big friends with him in high school, but 5 years ago, Ken invited him to stay at our house, and we found out he was very liberal, and he asked us what business was of ours to tell other women what to do. So we talked to him and everything, but he stayed at our house this weekend, and he protests at abortion clinics now because we gave him the opportunity, and we talked to him with respect and love. Now, that's not going to happen all the time, but your goal is to convert that person. He went home after that weekend, and he started calling us to get more facts. We planted the seed, and the Holy Spirit made it grow. Women coming to clinics, or your friends or other people that you might talk to about abortion, they're in pain. They're in a lot of pain. It might be economic pain. They might be forced to be doing this because someone said to them, if you have this baby, I'm going to leave you. Or if you have this baby, we're never going to eat again. We don't know these women. We don't know the pain that they were going through, but we know what methods work best to talk to these women. Like my grandmother used to say, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Sometimes you have to throw the vinegar out there. It depends on the situation, but you have to learn to read people. One of the things that has prepared me for what I do, and one of the reasons I have the job that I have and some of the jobs that I was hired for, is because I also have a minor degree in psychology, and I had to do some work in psychological settings, and you have to learn to listen and evaluate. You can't teach a person to walk until you teach them to tie their shoes, to put their shoes on. So it's baby steps. You have to have empathy. You have to try and put yourself in their shoes. And I put myself in their shoes when I tell the story of what it was like when my daughter was, when I was pregnant with my daughter. My son was a breeze, believe it or not. I always say that's why he's a better person than my daughter is. I tell her that all the time. But it's not true. I love my children both the same, but it was difficult not to experience what I experienced and come out with the grace of God, come out on the better side of it. You have to have empathy. And empathy is the ability to understand what someone else is feeling and to communicate that you understand while at the same time remaining objective enough to help them. You have to be able to hear that person, like in the video, pointed to heaven at them. I love that one. I use that all the time if someone gives the finger. Oh, I'll tell you a story. Do you all remember, it was about a year ago, when Cecile Richards, the president of Planned Parenthood, or the former president of Planned Parenthood, came to the Hudson Public Library and was promoting her book. And to me, to have a public institution promote a person that was responsible for killing during her interim several million, 23 million children was just disgusting to me. So the community rallied together and we led a protest outside the library, peaceful protest. St. Mary's Church in Hudson did a prayer procession all around it. So there was probably about 400 people involved in this protest, and actually we had 3/4 of the tickets inside too. They didn't know that. But it was pouring rain. It was a horrible day. And I thought, oh God, these people aren't going to stay here during this. But they did, because our convictions were strong. Well, my raincoat happens to be bright pink, which is a Planned Parenthood color. And that evening, I was walking up and down the sidewalk. I did not carry a sign, just to make sure people were okay, if they were had any kind of disability, trying to get them a chair, trying to keep them calm. And as I was walking back up the street, my husband was there too, and he happened to be holding one end of a banner that said, Planned Parenthood sells baby parts. And a gentleman, I say that nicely, walks across the street towards me and wants to give me the high five because he saw my pink raincoat, thought I was a Planned Parenthood. And he says, you go, girl. And I says, oh, thank you. And I said, are you here for Cecile Richards? He goes, oh, yeah. I says, well, are you pro-choice or are you pro-life? He goes, oh, I'm pro-choice, girl. I'm with you. And I said, really? I said, so you think it's okay to kill a baby in the womb? And he looked at me and went, because he thought I was with Planned Parenthood. He goes, his tongue was rolling, and so his option was he gave me the finger. So my husband was standing right behind me, and he said, sir, that's my wife. He goes, I think she's number one too, which riled them up even more. So you have to let it go. You have to let it go, because there's a time and a place to argue. You have to be sincere. Someone is going to know if you're not sincere. They'll know it right away. I mean, your kids know when you're not sincere when you tell them that there's no cookies left, and they know damn well that they're in the cookie jar right behind you. So you have to be sincere. You have to practice that one. You have to be unconditionally accepting. You read the Bible and you read the New Testament, and I mean, Jesus was with the sinners. He was with the thieves. He accepted everybody. We had to be accepting. I had a friend come up to me one time that said she was at a wedding with me, and we were seated at this one table, and I didn't know her very well, but she knew what I did for a living, and so she wanted to start a conversation. And she said to me, my neighbor just had an abortion, and I just think that's horrible. I'm never going to speak to her ever again. And I looked at her and I said, why? She goes, well, because she killed her child. I says, but she was probably learned it was okay, and she's hurting. She needs healing. She needs God. She needs you. We have to not love the sin, but love the sinner. We have to be unconditionally accepting as much as that bothers us. Just like when our kids do wrong, we've taught them what to do, but we have to bring them back, just like the prodigal son. We have to accept them, and you have to be unconditionally accepting, and you have to be humble, because it's not us that's making a change, it's the Holy Spirit. You have to be obedient to God. You have to be, because it's really hard. It was harder to me. I talked a little bit this morning about when I was at the State House, and I would see these ministers get up and use the Bible to justify abortion. It just made me sick. I'm going to tell you about one of these ministers. I was sitting there, and every once in a while, if I know who the senators are on the committee, I can request to go last, because I usually, they have 3 different kinds of hearings for a bill. One's a proponent, one's opponent, and then they have interested party. I usually, if it's a small bill, they won't have the interested party. They'll just have proponent or opponent. But if it's a very controversial bill, they'll have the interested party. So that's when I always go down to testify, because an interested party, you can have both for and against abortion. And when there's interested party, if I know the senators, I always request to go last so I can hear all the people that are testifying against me. So that particular day, I knew that the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Rights was there, and all these pastors were down there. And this one woman pastor got up, and she talked about this woman, she said, that was a friend of her mother's that was Catholic. And she made suppositions that Catholics breed like rabbits. And she talked like this, and she says these Catholic women, they just go out there and they just keep having kids, whether or not they can afford them or whether they can have them at all. And she said that her mother had a friend that was Catholic that had 5 kids and a husband that wasn't very attentive or whatever, and found out she was pregnant again, and she was just going to go on with it because that's what she learned she was supposed to do. And instead of being a listening ear, she told her why she didn't have to have the baby. And it went on and on and on, and she was given biblical reasons. Well, what she didn't know, and what I never told you, is that I was raised Catholic. But I also was raised to realize, to understand that it's not the denomination, it's the Christianity. The Catholic is my family, but it's the Christianity that is the church. And so I had a very good upbringing, and I view us all as equals. But I also knew that I could tell her that Catholics don't breed like rabbits either. So I went last, and I got up there, and I said, having children is a sacred obligation. I said, all species, in order to survive, procreate. This is the difference between human beings and plants and animals, is that we know what happens in the act of procreation. We know that if we have sex, you're supposed to have a child. So that's why we have marriage, so that we can take care of our children. And I said, and that's why we have natural family planning. There are ways that you can prevent having a child right now, but even if you do, there's always help. That's what your church is for, that's what your friends are for, that's what your family is for. It says, we don't breed like rabbits. And I says, and you failed in your Christian responsibility to help that woman understand that every child is a gift from God. Well, also in her testimony, she talked about women that have been raped or incest. So I happened to have with me a picture of 6 different children, infants, and I held them up. And I said, do you see anything different about any of these children other than they're just different children? And they said, no. I says, well, 2 of them were children that were conceived in rape. I says, the only difference between those 2 children and the other 4 children is the method in which they were conceived. I says, the rape was a violent, violent act. But are you telling me that the father should be convicted and thrown in jail and the child should have a death sentence? I said, no one ever said it was going to be easy, but there's help available. And I shut them up, and the bill passed. Now I know it wasn't just because of me, but if you get to tell these things with compassion, that these are the facts. Because you'll often have a lot of people that think it's okay to abort a child because it was conceived in rape. Well, how different is that child? Most women that, and I know a lot of them that have children that were conceived in rape, they consider it not the rapist's child, it's a child of God. It's their child. They're giving it life. Just because it was conceived that way doesn't make the act of life something wrong with it. You have to have a concern for the woman because, like I says, it's all about the woman, not about the child. And you have to recognize your own biases and values. Now, someone asked me earlier about preventing pregnancies. I love to read church signs. My favorite one that I've ever seen, and I repeat it all the time, is you must prepare and prevent instead of repair and repent. But it's the type of preparation. Now, if you saw me this morning, I had on high heels, and I had on a flimsy little brace inside my pant leg. And I know that I have a bad knee and a bad hip. And I knew that those high heels were going to kill me. And I thought, well, I'm not going to have to stand that long this morning. But it did kill me anyhow, so I have my flats on for this class tonight, and I have my heavy-duty knee brace on because I want to prevent further damage. It's the same thing about pregnancies, but most people, and you will hear Planned Parenthood tell you that you should give birth control to high school kids. I'm going to give you some facts that you don't know. There was I believe, an 8 or 10 year study done in Great Britain, one of the Scandinavian countries, and I believe it was China, where they gave birth control to kids in high school. Most of it was condoms. Some of it was hormonal birth control. And did anybody ever tell you, or did your parents ever tell you, if you can't be good, be careful? That doesn't relate to sex. What happened with this study is that instead of teaching children, our children and our youth, that sex is the ultimate expression of a love between a married couple, they're telling them that it's your biological right, and they're giving them birth control and saying, here, if you're not going to abstain, and if you're not going to wait till marriage, then here, use this. So what happened is kids used it, and the incidence of sex, there was lots more sex. And there was failure of birth control, and a lot more pregnancies, and a lot more abortions. But the astounding and the scary part about it was that the incidence of sexually transmitted diseases skyrocketed because of the failure to use it correctly, or they were doing sex whenever they wanted to, and unprotected, and they had this incidence of sexually transmitted diseases, which resulted in a lot of infertility. So what they were trying to prevent, they were preventing permanently. So I'm not saying I'm saying that you should talk to your kids about abstinence, and you should talk to them, but you should know that in a majority of our schools, Planned Parenthood is teaching the sex education program, and I have the textbooks. And you should inquire in your school system. Most of the major school systems have it, and the reason that they have it is because there was a federal grant given by President Obama many years ago that awarded money for, it's called responsible sex education classes to the public school systems, and so that the school system didn't have to pay for it themselves, and Planned Parenthood is the largest provider of sex education classes. And if you saw the textbooks, you would die. And a lot of parents don't know that their children are doing this, and there is no opt-out clauses. And they maybe have 15 seconds of abstinence is the only way, but that they go into a lot of creative things that would make you sick. And I've seen the text that they used for as young as 10-year-olds. In New York City, I get the papers confused. I think it's the Times, I'm not sure. A parent group wanted to publish the textbook, a few of the pages of the textbook for the 10-year-olds in the paper to show people what was what they were learning in school. And the Times, I think it was the Times, refused to put these pages in there because they were considered pornographic. That's in our schools. So you have to countermand that with what's in your home. And if you think, well, my kids go to a Christian school, my kids go to a private school, they're okay. What about their friends? What are their friends learning? What are they seeing on social media? What are they seeing on television, in the movies? Because I said it didn't come in all of a sudden. It came in little by little by little, and we've accepted it. We've known it. Anybody here ever been to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.? We used to take groups of high school kids there, and in conjunction with the March for Life in Washington, D.C. And we would go there, and when you go into the Holocaust Museum, they give you an ID card, and then they pack you in this elevator that looks like a train car, and you're smashed in there. You're getting the experience of what it was like to be one of the Jews during World War II. And then it takes about 2 or 3 hours to go through this exhibit, and it's all interactive, and self-explanatory. Now, when you're with high school kids and they're seeing all this, they're shocked. They may have learned about the Holocaust, but they don't learn it into the detail that you see in D.C. Now, and I've been there many times, and every time I go there, I learn something new, and I come out in tears every single time. Now, this particular time, we had a chaperone with every 6 kids, and I was with this group of 6 girls, and we came out at the end, and on the wall, and I'm going to get this wrong, who said it? I think it was Elie Wiesel. It says, they came for the sick, and I wasn't sick, so they didn't take me, and then they came for this one, and then they came for the trade workers, and then they came for me, and there was nobody there to stand up for me, and so it's a really poignant poem. I've got it all screwed up. But when you come there, you see that and realize it's telling you that you didn't stand up for anybody. So we come out of this exhibit, and there's this big room for reflection, and these 6 girls walk up to me, and the tears are coming down their face, and I never told them why we were coming there. And the one girl comes up to me, and she said, "How could we have let this happen?" And I said, "Well, let me tell you." I said, "This happened in the 1930s and the 1940s. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the media on the beach waiting for the troops to come in, or media at the concentration camps. We didn't have 24-hour news cycles. We didn't have satellite TV. We didn't have this stuff. There was rumors, but we didn't really know. And if we did, we thought, no, that can't happen." And she looks at me and she says, "I get it. We have abortion. We know it's happening, and we're not doing anything." And I said, "Exactly. We know it's happening. We can do something, whether it be prayer, whether it be standing at an abortion clinic, whether it be using the tools that I gave you. I've got lots of them. I know I'm talking a lot. But I want to go into a few more things about when you're talking with your friends and your family or at a clinic. You have to be peaceful. Do you know how hard it is to be peaceful when someone's yelling at you, when someone's giving you the finger, and you have to be peaceful and turn the other cheek? You don't want to drive your friends and family away to think you're a religious nutcase, because this isn't about religion. This is about human rights. Abortion is the biggest human rights violation in history. You have the genocide in Rwanda. You have all the genocides that took place and the killings in Bosnia, Herzegovina, Africa. It pales in comparison to what is going on with abortion. You have the media over the last couple weeks screaming about the deaths from vaping. Where are they screaming about the abortions? It's a woman's right. It's her right. It's between a woman and her doctor. Let me tell you something about Roe v. Wade you might not have known. Roe v. Wade did not make abortion legal. What Roe v. Wade did was to take it out of the hands of the states to stop abortion, because several states did have anti-abortion laws, and they said, nope, it's a medical procedure that is covered under a woman's right to privacy. And Justice Blackmun, in his opinion, when he wrote this, said a couple of things. He said, we don't have to determine when life begins because medical science and the experts don't know. That was in 1973. Well, we do know now. It's proven. He also said that that child in the womb is not a person. That was his opinion. That was not the constitutional opinion. That was Justice Blackmun's opinion, and it became law. That's why you see these things going on today, personhood amendments, to declare that the unborn is a person, because I guarantee you that our founding fathers, when they wrote the Constitution, did not mean that an unborn child should not be declared a person. I alluded to, I want to just give you a reason why we weren't standing behind the heartbeat bill. It's not because it wasn't a good bill. Roe v. Wade took it out of the hands of states to stop abortion. And then another bill that came by right after it, Doe v. Bolton, and then Planned Parenthood versus Casey, specified that you can't stop abortion before viability. Viability is when the earliest date that a child can live outside of the womb of the mother. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to be in the mother's womb the whole time. But the law specifies that states cannot stop abortion before viability, and it's been upheld by the Supreme Court many times. So the heartbeat bill comes in direct contradiction with established federal law, and that's why the court struck it down. The reason you didn't hear us talk about it is we are a 501c3 and C4 organization, which by law, we cannot do more than 15% of our time and efforts in political activities. So we had to be careful in what we choose to place those resources. Our job is to educate so that even if the law never changed, we dry up the need and those abortion clinics will go away. So bills like the heartbeat bill that take place on a state level are educating a lot of people, but you didn't hear us talk about it only because of that, not because we think it's wrong. We knew that it would probably be struck down and our money went down the tubes. And the other thing you don't realize is that should that case go to court, which it probably won't, although it's trying to, but should it go to court and it fail again, the pro-life side in the state has to pay the court costs and everything to the opposition. So you're putting more money into the abortion clinics, into Planned Parenthood, and I can't stomach that. I won't do it. So if you ever have a question about why we support or don't support something or remain neutral, call me and I'll be glad to explain it to you. Now, on the federal level, if a heartbeat bill should pass or should a Life at Conception Act pass on the federal level, that would be great. But you know, we don't have to overturn Roe v. Wade. Do you know that the reason the Civil War started was because of the Dred Scott Act? And the Dred Scott Act said that the gentleman, Dred Scott, was a slave that lived in the North, but his master lived part-time in the North, part-time in the South. His owner took him back and forth. But while he was in the North, he never ran away. He liked his master. But then his master died, and the wife took over, and he wanted, when they were in the North, he wanted to leave. And she wouldn't let him, took him back down south, and he sued and it went to court, and the court ultimately ruled that he was the property of the owner's wife. And that's one of the reasons the Civil War started, because it declared that the blacks and the slaves were property and not human beings. Dred Scott was never overturned. President Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, which was later codified in the Constitution, but it was never overturned, and we can do that with Roe v. Wade too. It's just going to be a lot harder because in the 40 years since abortion was legalized nationwide, there's been so much change technologically, and I call ourselves the fast food society. We want things fast. We want them now, and we don't want to have to deal with the consequences. It's never been like this in history. No. Well, it's not a matter of being a holdout right now. It has to be the right case that challenges it. Like Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch, we know they would help overturn it if the right case was presented. But right now, according to what has been presented, they have to uphold the law as it is written, and the Supreme Court acts on something. Is there any lawyers here? I might say this wrong. Stare decisis precedent. It means, and because they refuse to go against precedent. However, there is a case that was affirmed yesterday in Louisiana that will probably challenge precedent regarding abortion clinic doctors have to have admitting rights to a local hospital, and it's been turned down, and the Supreme Court turned it down in other states, but they're going to hear this case, and it gave me a glimmer of hope. There's also 2 other cases out there which give me a glimmer of hope. One of them you may have heard about was an 18-year-old boy whose girlfriend was pregnant, and she went and got an abortion. And he was devastated because the man has no say. You husbands out there, if your wife wants to have an abortion, you have no say. She can do it without your consent, even if it's your child. Well, this young man, his girlfriend had an abortion. He was devastated. So he's very pro-life. He had a very pro-life attorney, and so what they did is they introduced a case to sue the abortion clinic, and it could have been anybody really that he sued, on inheritance rights, because there's 2 places in the law in which the unborn child is considered a person. One is under the inheritance law. An unborn child has inheritance rights if someone should pass away. And also the other one is the Unborn Victims of Violence Act, which says that if someone should kill a pregnant woman and kill her child too, they can stand trial for 2 murders. That conflicts with abortion law. And it's 2 different areas of law, but if those cases are presented in the right way, they have the ability to go all the way through to the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade, and I think that can happen. So keep praying. But in the meantime, you have to talk to your friends and family. We don't care if the law, yes, we do care if the law changes, but we want to dry up the need for abortion. As much as faithful as we are, we don't want to be evangelizing first. Evangelizing comes second. You get them to listen to you, and then you bring them to God later. That's the only time I'm ever going to say that. Because God is come first in your life, but a person that's in trauma doesn't want to hear that. You don't argue. You don't block cars from going into an abortion clinic. You don't go on the clinic property. You do everything that we've talked about here. I've given you a lot of handouts. I've talked a lot. I want to close with a few things. First of all, I want to say a little bit about Planned Parenthood. I've given you a fact sheet about Planned Parenthood. There's a lot of people that are confused that think that Planned Parenthood is a good organization. And I think they could be if they did what they were supposed to do, if they focused on women's health care. But they have a directive that has abortion quotas in it. And I've given you a fact sheet that tells you what their abortion quotas are. And they tell you that if Planned Parenthood is defunded, low-income women are going to lose their health care. Well, the fact is that for every single Planned Parenthood location in the United States, there's at least 20 alternatives. In the 5-county area around Akron, which is my primary area, which is Summit, Portage, Stark, Medina, and I forget which other one. Wayne County. There are 5 Planned Parenthood clinics. There are 13 pregnancy resource centers. There are 12 federally qualified or rural health care clinics where they can get reimbursement through Medicare or Medicaid for women's health care that don't do abortions. And there are 12 free or sliding scale health care clinics where women can go. And these clinics are all in better accessible areas than the Planned Parenthood locations. That doesn't even count the free health care that is given out by many of our state hospitals and institutions. So it's a lie that Planned Parenthood is the only clinic available. You can get more comprehensive health care at all these other facilities. And I wanted to touch on that because you'll get a lot of people that say, well, I went to Planned Parenthood for this and that and the other thing. And it's true, you can do that. But their primary business is abortion. And they're going to tell you that it's only 3% of their business is abortion. That's a lie, too. Let me explain how they do that. If you're a woman and you go to Planned Parenthood for an abortion, you're going to have maybe a urine test, maybe a blood test, maybe get an aspirin. You might have up to 10 services. They count each of those as services. The abortion is a service every bit on the same level as getting an aspirin. So they say you went in there, so it's only a tenth of their business. So they count it all on the same plane, and that's how they come up with it. It's creative accounting. We know how that is with our taxes, right? I've also given you that Planned Parenthood fact sheet, and I alluded to the fact where those clinics are. I've given you the sheet that shows you where they are. I've given you witnessing guidelines that show you where the 2 abortion clinics are in the Akron area. If you want to know and want to go to the ones in Cleveland, I will put you in touch with the people where you can go to those facilities, and I give you guidelines on how to do it. I've also given you a paper that looks like this. It's a copy of a web page called abortiondocs.org. You noticed in the video they were talking about all the lawsuits and everything. In the video they said you can go to the courthouse and look up all these lawsuits and you can look up everything. You don't have to do that. If you go to abortiondocs.org, you can type in the name of the abortion clinic and you can type in the name of a particular doctor. For instance, David Berkins is the abortionist that is at the Northeast Ohio Women's Center. He happens to be the medical director at Preterm. He helped Founders Clinic in Columbus. He ran an obstetrician business in Euclid. He also helped at the Toledo abortion business, and he's got pages and pages of healthcare violations. His clinic has been shut down several times, and you can carry this if you ever get close enough to somebody to tell them how bad it is. The Bedford Health Center, Planned Parenthood, I've got pages and pages of things on there about the abortionists that are involved with them and all the fines that they've had to pay to the Ohio Department of Health. And you can get all that information on abortiondocs.org. The handouts that I've given you in your folders are very thorough. Please read them. You can call me. You can go on our website. One thing I would encourage every one of you to do is please go to our website, which is www.righttolifeofnortheastohio.com. And on almost every page, you can sign up to be on our email list. If you're on our email list, you will get the quarterly newsletter. If you'd rather get it by mail, call my office and I'll put you on the mailing list. But I also send out e-blasts every week and a half or so that about action alerts, things that you can do, things that keep you current on what's going on. Because we have to stand together. We have to end the scourge of abortion, and not just abortion, euthanasia, assisted suicide. We have to raise our children. I can give you tips and hints. I've given you a lot of stuff tonight. A lot of it is overwhelming. That's why I want you to go home and read all of that. If you can, please, and if you have any inkling that you could do this, please come and witness at one of the abortion clinics. You can call me and I can give you a schedule when they're there, but they don't have to be open for you to go there. We need people there all the time, and they'd like to change their hours, or Planned Parenthood. Pray, go to our events. There's so much to do. The prayer card that I gave you, on the back of it has lots of different ways, of different things that you can do to help end the scourge of abortion and be pro-life. There's so much to do. I think we can do it, but we have to do it together. We can't just stand still. We have to stand up for it, or nothing's going to change. There's a priest called Father Frank Pavone. He heads up an organization called Priests for Life. And he says America will never end abortion until America sees abortion. And he's saying that because of the Holocaust, because it says if we had seen the pictures of the Holocaust, it would have ended sooner. Now, yes, in that video, you saw a couple pictures of aborted babies. Am I telling you to go out there and show aborted babies? No. I don't think graphic images are really good in this situation in public. There's a time and a place for them, but we need to be compassionate. We need to deal with people to realize what is happening and that our children are dying, and our country is not overpopulated. Here's an interesting fact. You know, do you hear this stuff about I'm sorry, I make fun of her, AOC. I'll be very nice. They're talking about you can't have kids or you have to eat your babies because of the overpopulation. Do you know that we are not replacing ourselves at a rate to make our population go on? And the world is not overpopulated, people are just living longer. And there was a study done that if you took every single person in the world and gave them a plot of land, don't hold me to this, I only read it once, I think it was 30 feet square, everybody in the world would fit in the state of Texas. So there's a lot that they're saying to get their agenda through because it's lucrative. So I've given you a lot. I could go on for 10 hours, but I'm not going to. I want to go home tonight. I hope I gave you enough to give you to be a warrior with me. Ultimately, our goal is we want all the churches in Summit and Portage County to adopt an hour or adopt a day or something where you would all go to an abortion clinic and pray for a certain amount of time. That's up to you, but at least pray, at least read this and be knowledgeable, because you can affect your friends and your family, and that will be very helpful when you go to the polls. And I want to end it on one last thing about voting, pro-life voting. Somebody said, are we one-issue voters? And I said, no, we are not one issue, but abortion and the right to life has to be the primary issue. And they says, yeah, but some of these other people that aren't pro-life have all these good ideas. And I says, let me put it in a way you can understand. Let's say you need a new pair of shoes. When you go to the store, what's your number one focus about that new pair of shoes? And I said, It's that they fit. Your shoes have to fit. After that, you can consider color, you can consider style, you consider where it has a high heel, low heel, where you're going to wear them, but they have to fit. That's your primary concern. All the rest are important, but they have to fit. It's the same thing with being pro-life and electing legislators that are going to have your values. They have to have a right to life and respect for life. Because if you don't have the right to life and you're not born, what good is the economy? You're not going to need it. So it's our primary issue. It's not one issue. Yes, we're concerned about the economy, we're concerned about education, we're concerned about all of that, but you have to have the right to life. And you have to plant the seed for the Holy Spirit to make it grow. Thank you. Yeah. Questions? Yes. Sure. No. Abortions are not covered by Medicare or Medicaid, but the money, we have over 500 million taxpayer dollars going to Planned Parenthood annually. They just lost $60 million of it because of Title X. But the money that goes to Planned Parenthood is fungible, which means it goes into a big basket. And if they can put that money towards paying the rent or paying their staff, whether they're health or whether they give an abortion or not. So even though it's not directly paying for the abortion, it's aiding them in that. The Title X funding that they just lost was for family planning funds. Back in I forget the year it was, when Title X is family planning money, and by law it cannot go to any facility that promotes abortion as birth control, because the federal government and the state government say that having a child born is primary importance. So you can't use abortion as a method of birth control. During the Clinton administration, they muddied the waters a little bit with the translation, so this family planning funds were going to Planned Parenthood. $60 million of it were going to Planned Parenthood, and that's what just got taken away by President Obama. I'm sorry, by President Trump and their administration. And we're trying to get the rest of it taken away and go to other federally qualified clinics. But Planned Parenthood is very lucrative, and they spend millions in campaigns on the Democratic side. I'm sorry to say, and I'm not trying to talk political parties here, but that's where it goes. That's the reality of it. And they're saying that women are going to lose their health care. So the money that they get technically is not being used for the procedure, but because it can't. But federal and state dollars cannot be used for it either. But they work around it because of that. They're putting that money in the big pot there. It costs a lot to have an abortion depending on how far you are along, and that's their big moneymaker. Yes, yes. It depends on how far along they are. The RU-486 abortion usually costs anywhere between $300 and $500. Early term abortion usually starts at $500 on up. Late term abortions, the farther along you are, the more complications there are, the more expensive it gets. And where do they get the money? Where do they get the money for drugs? It's the same way. They do everything they can to get it. And that's what makes the money for Planned Parenthood. Yes? Adoption, that's a... No, you can't hook up with an abortion clinic. Are they told about... Are they told about the number of abortions in this country, you're saying? Well, I think it's there's a lot of people that want to adopt that can't adopt because the children are being aborted. There's very few babies that are adopted out. We work with a couple, or I shouldn't say we work with them, but we do training sessions with them, and we're involved with them. A couple of different adoption centers. One of them is, you might have heard of Spirit of Faith Adoptions, that the pregnancy resource centers will refer their clients to them, because sometimes if they're abortion vulnerable, and you tell them to give life to the child, even if you don't want to parent them, you are doing something that's selfless, and a lot more adoptions these days are open adoptions. There's a lot of people that say they would rather kill their child than not know what's going on in their child, in their life. So a lot of these adoptions these days, there will be some form of communication between the adoptive family and the mother, whether it just be photos or a letter that's been written that will be given to the child. They make these plans, and then that way the abortion vulnerable mother has some hope that she's just not giving away, because you're not giving away your child, you're giving them life. So, but there aren't a lot of adoptions because of infants, because then a lot of them aren't being born. And that's the biggest thing you're going to hear too from abortion advocates, is that, why don't you adopt one? Well, there are none. And I'm not saying we're going to solve all the world's problems or the problem with child abuse or anything else. You'll hear that too. It's like, why should this child be born into the world if their whole family, they've been abused, this kid's going to be abused too? Can you read the future? I don't have a crystal ball. Who knows how these kids are going to come out? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. There's sort of laws, but they don't get enforced. The ultrasound has to be done, but she does not have to look at it. Every time we come out with putting these things in law, we can pass them. A lot of them have huge opposition at the very end. In order to get the law passed, they'll compromise and take some of those things out. But even when we have strong things, it's very difficult to enforce them. Yes. Who's pro-life? No, it doesn't. When it comes time, like we can't endorse anybody. There are right to life groups that have political PACs. You have to have a political action committee. We don't. What we do when it comes time for an election is we issue candidate comparison sheets, which tells you how the candidate is on certain issues. And we have them on most of your major, and we'll have them closer to the election on most of your major candidates. I think, was it in this newsletter? I can't remember. Katy Perry. The one that has the Democratic candidates' views on abortion. Not all Republicans are pro-life either, but we can't tell you who to vote for. We can just give you the comparison. We do that on issues too. Yes. Yeah, the pregnancy resource centers. We have a program too, and we don't talk about this. It's one of where most of our money goes. We are privately funded, total donations. The majority of our funding goes to a program that we contract with a group called Heroic Media. They're a very pro-life organization out of Texas. They work with us and they buy up keywords on the search engines, on Google and some of the other search engines. An abortion vulnerable woman, one of the first things we're finding through extensive research that they do is they go on the internet to find out information. They type in, like, how much does an abortion cost? Does it hurt? Things like that. Well, this Heroic Media buys up all those keywords, and we have a limited budget per day. And if she types those in, we come up, but it doesn't say Right to Life of Northeast Ohio. It gives her the answer to her question, and it makes her do a link to, depending on where she is geographically, either directly to a pregnancy resource center or to Option Line, if you've heard about Option Line. If there's a local pregnancy resource center in the geographic area where she is, it connects her directly with them, either by phone or on the internet, but they don't know that it's a pro-life organization, and it gets her to make an appointment for that ultrasound where she chooses life, or in the event where there isn't one close by, it connects her to Option Line, who will be the middleman to make that connection for her. And we've saved a lot of lives over the years, but we have a limited budget. It only pays for so many times a day. So when the money is used up for the day, we don't come up anymore. We also have another program that the money goes to. A lot of girls in school are learning that their option if they have sex or get pregnant is to go to Planned Parenthood. And we call it a pre-roll campaign. We want to reach them before that comes up. So we have, through Heroic Media, a targeted demographic campaign that hits 13 to 29-year-old women. And how they know this, did you ever look for something on the internet? Like, I looked the other day for something for my father. I can't remember. It was some medical thing. And within 5 minutes, I had ads all over my homepage for it. And that's how you know. So they'll know if you're 13 to 29. I don't get to see these videos. I don't know. For some reason, they don't think I'm 13 to 29. But these girls, when they're on YouTube or Facebook, or I think there's 6 different applications, you know, pop-up videos come up. We have a video that says, I had sex last night, what do I do now? I might be pregnant. Or I'm pregnant in, what do I do? There's 6 different ones that are very carefully made, but they're 30-second videos that they can opt out of after 10 seconds. We're finding that they're watching them over and over, and very few opt-outs, and they're watching them more than one time. It can track that, and at the end, but we can't track we can track the first campaign that I told you about. We know all the stats. We know how many calls are made, how many were successful calls. With this pre-roll campaign, we just track how many times they watch them, and it's getting them to learn that Planned Parenthood isn't their only choice, that there's someplace else that they can go for that. And that's been playing for a year now, and we've had great success with it. So we have to go to where they are and meet them on their level. Sure. Other questions? Fears. Something you didn't know about, something that bothered you. I know a lot of times when I teach these classes, people think that they knew everything that they could know, and they weren't sure of the biology and everything. Yes? We happen to have, through most of your pregnancy resource centers, abortion healing classes, and I put them in touch with them because most of the people that teach these classes has had an abortion, and they know what to put them through. So you just be empathetic with them and get them to one of them. Which reminds me, I wanted to go over with you, I had promised you at the very beginning what to say for some of the most common things that people will tell you, so I'm going to just throw a few of them out there. Commercials, it costs money. Planned Parenthood has millions that they market with. We don't. So that's why we go to the clinics. That's why I go to the schools. That's why I speak in churches and tell people about these things so you can, when you're talking with your friends, in California they passed a law that calls them fake clinics. They're not fake clinics. They're not clinics at all. Some of them have limited medical licenses to do ultrasounds. Or they can do pregnancy tests or STD testings, but most of them are just there to help a woman with their pregnancy. Do you know that Planned Parenthood does not offer prenatal care? So if a woman is pregnant and goes to Planned Parenthood, she can't get anything but an abortion. Money. They do a lot. If you ever get a chance, you should volunteer at a place like this because it helps them. But I want to throw a few things out. Pro-choice, I don't use that word. So don't use pro-choice. Pro-abortion, pro-death. My body, my choice. Make your choice before you get pregnant. Yeah, let me go through all of these and then I'll tell you about all those. This is a good one. You'll see this a lot. Keep your rosaries off my ovaries. It's like, not everyone that advocates for life is a rosary praying Catholic. And newsflash, the fact that life begins at conception is biology, not theology. Abortion is a reproductive right, and this one's no-brainer. There's nothing reproductive about abortion. Abortion is health care. When was the last time that somebody was killed that was healthy? It's not a human being, it's a blob of tissue. I had this law professor I was giving a lecture at Cleveland State University at John Marshall School of Law, and they said that an acorn is not an oak tree, and an embryo is not a human being. And I looked at him and says, how'd you get your law degree? It says, it's like building a house. You have to add all the parts. When you have a child, you don't add anything except love and the mother's nourishment from the body. Keep the government out of my uterus. Really. I told you about the stop sign analogy. It's kind of the same thing. And this is the one I hear all the time. I hear this coupled with, they tell my husband, you're a man, you have no right to talk about abortion because you've never had a child. Or, if you don't like abortion, don't have one. By that analogy, if you don't like murder, don't murder somebody. If you don't like child abuse, don't abuse one. If you don't like theft, don't steal anything. It's stupid. I'm not going to tell somebody they're stupid unless they're getting really in my face and I'm tired. But those are the main ones you'll hear. And what I usually do is I don't argue with them. I use something. Do you know who Dr. Alveda King is, Martin Luther King's niece? She said she brings everything back to this one statement. Abortion kills a child and hurts the mother. And if they say something like, let me see, I can bring it back. Abortion is health care. Well, health care is supposed to be healthy, but abortion kills a child and damages the mother. Or they'll say something like, if you don't like abortion, don't have one. Well, I'm going to advocate against it because abortion kills a child and damages the mother. She brings everything back to that, so you deflect it. I learned growing up in college and in my career in marketing and in this field that when you do public speaking, if you get somebody that monopolizes the conversation that keeps going over, you keep looking at them, and you keep throwing me these barbs at me, and I'm looking at you, and I answer your question and very quickly look to the next person and say, what was your question? And you deflect it if you can't get off of it. So but keep that in the back of your mind, like Dr. Alveda King says, abortion kills a child and damages the mother. All right, what was your question? Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. What you hear in the news and what you hear in the news and hearing the lawmakers say about rape, the statistics they throw at you are false. Most women, there's not a lot of women that have children because of rape. I think it was Trent Franks made an idiot of himself by saying that there's this natural protection against it, and that's not true either. But the statistics show that if a woman aborts her child after rape, is talked into it, she's compounding violence with violence. Abortion is a traumatic act of violence, just like rape is a traumatic act of violence. So you're asking her to solve violence with violence, when instead she can solve it with love.
You guys ready to take an offering tonight? And thank you so much, Denise. And Denise, I'm assuming you'll stay for a few minutes if there's somebody that has questions. If you want to ask some more questions, after we've got to clean it up because folks are waiting in the nursery and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and do it. Fellas, go ahead and come on down here. And let's make sure that if you can do anything for Right to Life tonight, make sure you do it. And honestly, the truth of the matter is, the devil's got a lot of money that we don't have. And we need to do what we can so that we can help out as much as we can. Father, now thank you. Thank you for this wonderful lady that has spent her life promoting what you gave us as the most precious gift we can ever have outside of Jesus Christ. And we pray that you continue to bless, that you would continue, Father, to give safety and protection to those who are standing on the front lines in so many ways. Thank you for their sacrifice. And Lord, please, we pray, help us to be a part and to make a difference like we never have before. Bless now with this offering we take in Jesus'